New Thought Media Network proudly presents the Global Heart of Peace's Peace Party. Celebrate the many paths to peace, explore an exciting life of peace, embody joyous peace. Come to our weekly Peace Party, Mondays at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. Only on New Thought Media Network. www.ntmedia.org.
Hello, and welcome to Peace Party. And Peace Party is brought to you by the Global Heart of Peace initiative of Centers for Spiritual Living, where we share ideas and practices to nurture and celebrate the many aspects of peace and explore how exciting and uplifting a life of peace can be. And here at Peace Party, we recognize that we are all in this together, all in this experience, this life together. And as we nurture and practice peace within ourselves, we contribute to the expression of peace in our world. So I am Reverend Christy Semple. I am a minister in the New Thought Teaching of Science of Mind and a member of the Global Heart of Peace Initiative and the prayer team with New Thought Media Network. Thank you for joining us. Today, I'm going to talk about a quality of our thoughts and our feelings that contribute to peace. And we recognize here that peace is not only quiet contemplation, although that is very, very important. But there are many facets of peace that affect how we feel it within and how it expresses through us. And one of these facets or aspects is listening. And you might think, well, why listening in that relation to peace? And well, to start that off, think about what happens when we don't listen, or we think that others aren't listening. And what happens? Those feelings, misunderstanding can come forth, confusion, frustration, irritation, even anger. And all of that gets in the way of the peace that is in us when there isn't listening, when we're not listening to ourselves, when we're not listening to others, or when we feel others aren't listening to us. And then we take that with us throughout our day. And it affects the expression of peace through us and as us. And we take that, any frustration or confusion, and we take that into our spiritual practices as well. And so even when we desire peace, if we're not feeling that we're being heard or that we understand, really listening to ourself within or others, it affects our desire and expression of peace. Now, I'll share an example in my own life. I have a 16-year-old daughter. She's a bright light in my life. And recently, we started a conversation about going to college. And we started the conversation, and then after a short time, there was some confusion, and frustration, and misunderstanding, and it kind of built up from there. We weren't listening to each other. We were each saying what we wanted to say, and we weren't listening to what the other was saying. And it wasn't a peaceful feeling of peace, and it was frustrating. And have you ever had that happen to you when you're having a conversation where you're not listening to each other and you're not listening to yourself within? What am I really trying to say here? And so we took a break, a pause, and started over with that practice of listening. What am I really trying to say here? What are you trying to say? Let's listen to ourselves and to each other. And so that's an example of how this happens in our daily life. And it can happen in our interactions with people in our family, at our place of work, in our community. And it happens throughout the world. That listening, when we're not listening to ourselves, not listening to each other, the misunderstanding and the confusion and all kinds of things that can happen from that aren't conducive to peace. I remember one of the first classes I took when I came into this teaching is Foundations. It's called Foundations of the Science of Mind and the spiritual practices and principles in this wonderful teaching. And I remember learning in one of the classes in one of the classes within this course about the spiritual practice of listening. And I hadn't thought of listening as a spiritual practice before. This was all new to me. And there was a quote that really stood out for me in the materials, and it's one that I've continued to use from Ernest Holmes. Let the inner ear listen to the voice of spirit that is always speaking. Spirit, God, the divine, is always speaking, always expressing. And the importance of that, it reminds us that the divine is always present, always expressing, and to listen, always listen and honor that. That is honoring ourselves as an expression of the divine. And in that same class, the material encouraged listening with our whole heart and our whole being, that real being fully present when we're listening to ourselves, when listening to others, fully present, not judging, not jumping to conclusions, and remembering and honoring that our ideas, the ideas of others, are expressions of God. Even when they don't recognize that, we can recognize that. We can fully listen again to ourselves, that intuition, that guidance, and also ideas, the unique expression that we are coming up of desires, of things to do. That is honoring ourselves. And when we do that, and we the peace and the fulfillment that we feel makes a difference. And it's the same when we honor that listening of others, hearing what they're really trying to say, listening. And again, honoring ourselves and others as an expression of God and how that beautifully contributes to peace. And another helpful, wonderful resource for me related to listening. It's one of my favorite books. 7,000 Ways to Listen by Mark Nepo. I know a lot of centers study this, use this in book study groups. It's a beautifully written book. And Mark Nepo is the author of the New York Times bestseller, The Book of Awakening, that you may have heard of. But this 7,000 Ways to Listen is so beautifully written. And it explores the idea of deep listening and listening to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. And there are practical ideas in there to practices that we can use to really open us up. And again, that honoring of ourselves, others, of the world around us, of our earth. And think about how that contributes to peace. And one of my favorite quotes from that book, Mark Nepo says, "Listening is the doorway to everything that matters." When I read that touched me so deeply. Think about that. Listening is the doorway to everything that matters. The power of listening and how that contributes to, again, respect and honoring ourselves and others for the expression that they are. And that nurtures that relationship with ourselves as we listen to ourselves and the relationship with others. And something else that, another wonderful quote from that book, listening is being present enough to hear the one in the many and the many in the one. I'm going to say that again because I love that. Listening is being present enough to hear the one in the many and the many in the one. What a beautiful reminder, and how that contributes to the peace, that feeling of peace and calm and love and respect with ourselves and of others. And so that gives you an idea of some of the wisdom that is in this book. And again, a lot of practices. He offers lots of practices, and he shares stories about his own life. And he was talking about how he had the experience of cleaning files in his computer one day. And there were some old files, and he was really cleaning things out. And this message came up on his computer. Your definitions are 254 days old. His computer said, oh, that inspired me to think about my own definitions. Am I listening to my definitions, my ideas, my perspectives? And he called them my maps of being. I love that. And about the importance of, just like his computer, of being current with understanding those. And he said much of our trouble comes from the rigidity of obsolete definitions of self and world, which are like hardening arteries and harden and affect us in challenging ways. How about that? All definitions, that rigid way. And if we're not listening and opening up, and he had this wonderful exercise, he calls them reflective pauses, has them throughout the book, and about, centering ourselves and breathing and listening. He said, let yourself look at an old definition that you carry, maybe how you view yourself or your own worth or someone else, or how you are thinking about your likes and dislikes and how you honor that about yourself, and write down that definition. Write down that definition, he said, for the last time. And then you can take, just like as we have a bowl burning ceremony, you can take a match and light that. Poof. No, that's an old definition. And then relax and listen again and open up to a new definition of who you are, new idea of who you are. It's, again, moving, listening to change any old or rigid ideas. So much wisdom here to give you to think about and to practice in relation to listening, how it contributes to our peace within ourselves, the peace in our interactions with others, and that ripples out into the world. And so as we finish up here, I want to anchor that with an affirmative prayer, affirming, aligning with the one infinite mind and recognizing the good that is there and expressing. So I invite you to join me now. I know that there is one infinite all that is everywhere present in every moment, in all, through all, as all, in me, in all. And I recognize and honor that in new ways of listening to the wisdom that guides me with new awareness, and listen to the ideas that come up through me, the desires of expressing life, of being, and listening with the heart, full heart of listening to others close by around me, and listening to those that I interact with and those who are speaking all around, listening and remembering that it is Spirit, God, the divine, speaking through and as. For the voice of Spirit is always speaking. Even when others don't recognize, I do. And so I plant the seed of this knowing, this new awareness, this new practice of listening into the creative mind that is always present. And I know that the law of good responds, and it shines through in me and through me and as me in new ways. With a heart full of thanks, I affirm, and so it is. Ashe. Amen. And I thank you for joining today, and I invite you to watch next week when we will have a new Peace Party posted with Michael James Zimmerman, and he'll be talking about and musically expressing living peacefully in the present moment. So please join us then. It will be another beautiful celebration of Peace Party. And so I invite you also to, in addition to thanking you for joining us, to dance in the joy of a peace-filled life today and each day. Namaste.